It looks like it is recording. Wonderful. I want to thank you for joining me today as I introduce to you how to charter a club. As I mentioned in the preamble, we haven't chartered a club in a while, or it's kind of sporadic. And so what we want to do is create a more systematic way of chartering our clubs, understanding what are the questions that we need to answer along that journey, and when do we need to have those questions answered, and what do we do, who's involved, and how many people do we need, and that sort of thing. So today we're going to walk through the process of chartering a club. My name is Prahinski. I'm a past international director representing Region 6 and a past district director for District 62, which is what this is being built for. This recording will go out to District 62 members. If it happens to get shared with somebody else, that's fine. What we are encouraging all of you is to consider chartering a club, because it is so much fun. If you haven't been part of the chartering process, it is a little crazy, it is a little fun, and together it's just a joy to be part of this process. Yes, expect chaotic craziness, because nobody has a clue except for some of you who have actually attended a Toastmaster meeting, but a lot of people haven't. And that's what makes it fun. They are creative and they got all these ideas. Okay, so let's go ahead. I got some prepared slides for today. I want to welcome questions as it relates to how to charter a club throughout the process. And then I'll open it up at the end for more questions, question and answers. If you're asking a question specifically targeting the club that we're looking at a kickoff meeting on Monday, I'm going to ask that you hold those questions till I finish the recording, and then we'll dive deep into our conversation and preparation for that particular kickoff. All right. There it is. Let's go ahead and open this and get it ready to go. All right. So how do we charter a club? How do we charter a club? Right, it is there is a process, and there's a whole bunch of forms that need to be filled out, but that's not the fun part of it. The fun part of it is meeting all these new people who are excited about the mission of Toastmasters, who want to learn, and they're eager to have guidance on how to improve their communication and leadership skills. Oh, my clicker wasn't working, maybe because I forgot to plug in. So let's get that done. Okay, so I've got some toggles down on the bottom. So I'm going to organize the workshop here today on the before, the during. This is during the kickoff meeting, also called a demo meeting. I will refer to it as a demo meeting, but kickoff sounds so much more fun, doesn't it? And then the after section, which is, okay, let's get that charter paperwork in. Let's get this club chartered. And then we'll open it up at the end for Q&A. So I want to mention, as we get started, what resources are available to us. There are lots of resources on Toastmasters International website, but the most appropriate resource, I'm going to say, is this manual called How to Build a Toastmaster Club. Okay, so I'm going to encourage, if you are getting involved, that you do look at that resource. In addition, we have lots of people in our district that can help out. We have a club growth director. Thank you, Owen, for being here. We've got a club extension chair. Division directors, thank you for the division directors in the room. Area directors, yay, you're going to be actively involved as well on a variety of different levels. And then we also have something called sponsor clubs. These are clubs that are actually helping a new club charter. Club sponsors, these are individuals that are helping that new club charter, and club mentors. I'll talk about those, I'll define those in a couple slides from now. Okay, so first is to ask this question: is there an opportunity to charter a club in this particular location? And then a natural question is do we already have too many clubs? And since we've lost clubs, we know we have opportunity for new clubs. But the question is, where are those new club opportunities? And in general, if you have a population of at least 20,000, and a rule of thumb is there a McDonald's in that community? If yes, you could charter a club there, all right? Because there's enough people to keep that McDonald's running. We'd like to think that there's enough people to keep a club chartered in a charter strength. If it's a corporation, ask, is there more than 400 employees? If yes, it has a higher probability of being sustainable. Okay, so I am going to touch on the new potential club, which is scheduled for Monday. And that is looking at a place called Flint, Michigan. And so I went into the Find a Club, and I found that we have 4 clubs in that general area currently in Flint area. One of them happens to be online. The others, I believe, are meeting face to face. Okay, so do we have more space and more opportunity? Look at that. The Flint metro area has 344,000 people. Do you see that down at the bottom? I put it there. I did some additional research this afternoon. So how many clubs could the Flint area handle if I said it's a minimum of 20,000 per club? Guess what? We have enough population for 17 clubs. Woohoo! 17 clubs in Flint. Yeah. All right. We probably don't want to hit 17, but why not? All right. There's no such thing as saturation in our communities, particularly in this stage of our recovery after COVID. We have opportunities. Now, the area that's highlighted, this donut shape, is basically all of the areas around where there is no clubs. So we got Flushing, we got Schwartz Creek, we got Grand Blanc Charter Township, we got Mundy, we got Mount Morris Township. All of these places can handle a club. So I just want to encourage you to think, where can I put a club? Well, right here it can handle it. All right, so now what's the next step? Well, we have to find somebody who wants to take lead on it. And usually we call that person a contact person. They reached out to us already. They're interested in chartering a club. Or we have a location picked out, for example, a corporation. All right, yeah, let's start a club there. Or we happen to find a community location that we think we could charter a club at. All right, now ask the question, why? Why do we want to charter a club? What are the objectives? What is the vision that you have in the desire to charter this club? And then we might want to share some of the documents on how to charter. And I say some, not all, because it will be overwhelming to a person who is not a current Toastmaster. If they're not a current Toastmaster, they're not going to be excited about some of our paperwork. All right, so don't share all of it. If it's appropriate, if they're interested, then share some of the charter documents. Otherwise, just leave it out for now. Don't overwhelm the person. Now, one more thing, if it's an HR person, I like to ask questions about how they currently are helping their employees with improving their education. All right, so what programs do you use now? What programs have your employees been doing to continue their education? Okay, so the second is ask, what type of club do you want? Do you want a corporate club or a community club? That's one of the first questions. If it's a corporate club, how do you want the corporate club to be organized? All right, do you want it to be sponsored by the corporation, and what portion of the dues and or charter payments and or other aspects do you want the corporation to pay for? If it's a community club, what type of community club? This could be that it's a specialty club, or simply anybody in the community is welcome to join the club, or it could be an advanced club, for example. And then the next set of questions is, do you want it to be open to anyone, or do you want it to be closed and that they have to have special qualifications to become a member? So if it's a specialty club, it needs to be somebody, for example, who is interested in that specialty. Or if it's an advanced club, perhaps you have qualifications to make sure that the person who signs up for the club is advanced. All right, these are things that need to become into consideration as you are starting the process of setting this club up for success. Next is ask, who are the support leaders? And I mentioned earlier that you're going to want something called new club sponsors and new club mentors. And typically it's 2 of each. The 2 sponsors are predominantly focused on getting that club chartered. So they are the ones really promoting the club, maybe internal to the company or external to the community, to get the word out that this new club is about to exist and don't you want to be a member too? Okay, and so they're trying to attract those new members, and that is the job of the sponsor. In addition, you have something called club mentors, and they will also start at the same time as the sponsors. They're actively engaged in trying to recruit new members, but they're also focused on trying to train officers and the members in how to run a meeting or how to take their officer role and be successful in it. And so those 2 things come in together. Now the mentors are not technically responsible for chartering the club or making sure that the charter paperwork gets submitted. They're there predominantly to help the people of the club be successful in whatever roles they're filling. Next, I suggest sponsor clubs. And this is particularly important if you have a club that has this new possible club has no bank account. All right. And let's say it's not in a corporation, so they can't use the corporate accounts. And so they need somebody to help them process the membership paperwork and the membership dues so that it is received and held onto until the club officially charters. And so that's predominantly what a sponsor club is. But a sponsor club is also there to provide support to the sponsors and mentors to ensure that the word gets out and guiding, if possible, sponsors and mentors on how to improve what they're already doing. All right. And so a sponsor club has many members and they can offer assistance as needed. Lastly, we have a group called district leaders. And I know that's a catch-all, but do we have opportunities here to have assistance from them? Absolutely. That's one of the things that they're there for, is to provide you the support. And I mentioned who they are earlier. All right, so next thing is you start planning this demonstration meeting or kickoff meeting. I like the term kickoff, but our paperwork tends to call it a demonstration meeting. So when do you want to have it? Where do you want to have it? How do you want to have it? So is it going to be hybrid? Is it going to be face-to-face? Is it going to be 100% online? All of these are options. What time of day is it going to be? What day of the week? How often are you planning to set up the club meetings? Then we need to schedule it. Do we have a facility? Do we have the Zoom if we're using Zoom or some other online platform? What is this club going to be called? Do we have a potential name for it? Who might be some of the officers? Do we have enough people already interested in the officer roles? What do we want our local club dues to be? Many clubs in our area are using $1 per member per month as the local club dues. Some of them choose $2, and some of them have some other interesting creative ways of getting club dues. And lastly, how do we want to handle this charter payment of $125 to charter the club? Who's going to pay for that? And so if it's a corporate club, the corporation may choose to pay that fee and the members don't have to worry about it. If it's not, then we might have to divvy up that $125 according to the number of members that are signing up for the club. Since we require a minimum of 20 members, it ends up being a very small nominal value if it ends up being added to the member dues. Now let's take a closer look at the member dues. The member dues are $45 for the 6 months, plus $20 for anybody who's brand new to Toastmasters. Okay, and so that's automatically, then whatever the club dues, local club dues are that we just talked about, is it $1 per month or whatever it is. And then I have something called next renewal. And this is because when we charter a club, it's good for 6 months. That charter payment is good for 6 months. After that, we have to pay to get it up to the next renewal period, which is always the end of September or the end of March. And so what we might want to do, what makes a new club have a breath of air, a little sigh of relief, that, hey, we have the next renewal cycle coming up. Wouldn't it be better just to get us through the next renewal cycle? So 6 months, maybe add an extra month to it or 2 months to it. So if I'm chartering in February, actually, let me do the fall. If I'm chartering in August, I might say, let me pay for 2 months, August and September, plus that 6 months. All right. And that'll get us through till the March renewal period. And that is very helpful for new clubs to do that. But if they don't charter right away, that makes this number variable and it can get messy. And so this is where you need a very good accounting system to make sure that you keep track of who's paid what dues. And when the charter date approaches, assuming they're not chartering right away, when the charter date approaches, you have to do some mathematics, get it all working out to make sure each member has paid an equal amount of dues, and that it will get you through to the next renewal cycle or just past it, whatever you've decided you want on that. And then lastly, we need to promote. I say lastly, I might not have it lastly, but we need to promote this meeting. We need to get ideally at least 30 people in attendance at the meeting. If you don't have at least 30 people, some of them will say, I'm not interested. And therefore you want to have at least 20 people signing up. So I say have at least 30 people showing up, and of them expect hopefully that at least 20 of them will sign up. You can charter the same day. Woohoo! Charter! Yeah, that's what we want. All right. Oh, here's some more information. Okay, before the demonstration meeting, we need to have some handouts. And if it's virtual, then we can have the virtual handouts. We can post it in the chat to say, go get this information, you're going to want it. Okay, if it's not virtual, if it's a face-to-face meeting, then let's have some handouts. Membership application, we want everyone there who's interested to sign that application, get it filled out at the end of today's meeting. And we also want to collect dues from them, ideally, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. We want them to also be aware of the features, values, and benefits. First of all, if I'm able to physically hand it out, or if I have an electronic copy to share, this can be shared with other people to encourage them to say, yes, I want to become a Toastmaster. Lastly, for the demonstration meeting, I'm going to suggest that you also hand out a plain blank index card. And this is where we're going to have the start of our table topics. And I'll explain that in just a minute. In addition, you might want a few copies. You don't need one for every member, but a few copies of the club constitution and addendum. And then icebreaker guidance. You're going to need a couple people to sign up for the next meeting to do their icebreakers. And so you want to have some guidance available to whoever's interested in it as they mentally and literally verbally start preparing for that icebreaker speech. For the demo meeting, we want to prepare who's going to take meeting roles, and we want to fill all the roles. And my suggestion is fill all the roles except for the helper roles. The helper roles of timer, counter, or filler words, and grammarian. Keep them empty, but every other role should be filled out. So get one speaker, one person to be table topics master, and then the Toastmaster, along with an evaluator and a general evaluator. I'm sorry I didn't list all of that, but all of that should be decided in advance. Who are those people? All right, now at this point, I've reached the end of the before the demonstration section. I'd like to ask if there's any questions. If you have a question, go ahead and unmute and ask your question. Stefan.
Carol, you said to keep these roles open. Did you specify the reason for having these open?
Not yet. Okay.
Thank you.
Let me just jump to that answer. The reason to keep the helper roles open is we actively want to encourage the newbies to sign up, to take that role at the first meeting so that they can learn it. This helps spread the learning, not just in the future meetings, but to get them encouraged right now to sign up. When people are actively engaged, they stay engaged. So my suggestion is to leave those easier roles, leave them open, and I think you'll have better success into the future. Other questions?
Carol, you mentioned you want to collect dues, but you also mentioned if a club takes a bit of time to charter, it gets a bit tricky with the accounting.
Yes.
What's the best way to manage that?
I'll throw this out there just as I don't know, it's just as a guess. Collect 8 months of dues. Just collect 8 and include the local dues, include your new member fee, and then store it in whoever's got the bank account. Okay. When it's time to actually submit the charter paperwork, you might have to make some adjustments. Okay, in terms of, okay, let's go for one more month. We need to collect one more month. It's only $10 or whatever the number is. It's a little bit easier to collect just a few dollars than it is to collect a more sizable segment. And if it's less than 8 months, if it's only 7 months, or it's perfectly 6 months, then you actually have refunds, and people are like, ooh, just hold it till the next cycle. I'm cool. And then you already have some money for the next cycle. Thank you, Kim. Anybody else? Another question? Not hearing any. I'm going to go ahead and continue. All right, so let's go into the actual demo meeting. All right, and I mentioned earlier, and I've already talked to why, is get people signed up that you've never met before. They're brand new to Toastmasters. Encourage them to take a role, fill a role, grammarian or timer. And then ideally you have somebody else that is a Toastmaster already there to mentor them in the job. Talk to them privately, softly, to help them with that responsibility. If it's, for example, the filler words, you can help point out, oh, I just heard one over there, and they can help keep track of who's got what filler words to report on it at the end of the meeting. I mentioned you want one speaker. Ideally, this is not a super polished speaker. You don't want a perfectionist up there, all right? You want people to connect with the speaker to say, I am also capable of doing what that person up there is doing. And so I once went to a demo meeting where the speaker was super polished and people in the room found it really scary. I'm not that good, is what they were thinking and saying to themselves. And therefore I'm in the wrong place. And that's not what we want. We want somebody who still is improving their skills, not somebody who's super polished. I mentioned to hand out that index card. Ask them, this is when they're walking in the room, take this index card and write one surprising fact about you on that card. And this is something that anybody else in the room doesn't know about, okay? And then when you finish filling out that card, give it to, and you can point out who the table topics master is. You don't necessarily have to call them by that title. Just say, hand them over there to Joe, and he'll collect that information. Now, from the new member, these are people saying, oh, sign me up, I can't wait. Ask them, and you can do it right at the start of the meeting, is fill out the application. Everybody received an application, go ahead and fill it out. And when you're ready at the end of the meeting, we will collect it from you. Next is collect the dues. And Kim and I were just talking about how much, ideally you've already got some of these answers, such as the local dues, what will it be? What portion of the charter fees will be covered by the members, if any? And then what portion of the renewal period do you want to cover? And then if you have community clubs, this is a special caveat here, do not collect credit card information. It expires sometimes before the club charters. I once went through with a club that took 4 years to charter. And so by then, some of the credit cards had already expired. They were no good, and we had to start over in some of those people. That's one of the reasons why it did take 4 years to charter. The other thing is work with your sponsor club to understand what payment methods do work for that sponsor club. And I know one of the clubs that I've been involved with collects cash, check, or PayPal. I know another club collects Venmo as an alternative. And so what we want to do is collect the payments right away. If the person decides somewhere between now and the charter date that they no longer want to be a Toastmaster, you might be able to refund some of the fees, depending on, for example, the portion that was charter payment dues and that sort of thing. You might be, and I would hope that you can refund as much as possible to that person. But ideally, we do want to reach that 20 people right away. Okay, and then you give some explanation to the handouts. All right, do cover briefly the membership application. Here's the parts of that application that you do need to fill out. Make sure you sign it. Make sure you get an address, a phone number. These things are required. And then talk about the values and benefits form. It's called Features, Values, and Benefits. I'm sorry, I didn't put the whole title there. It's wonderful, a really great handout on why you want to become a Toastmaster. And then for interested attendees, hand them the club constitution and icebreaker guidance for anybody who wants to speak at the next meeting. Towards the end of the demonstration meeting, confirm any earlier decisions that you made with your contact person. So what is the name of the club? What are the meeting times and frequencies, day of the week? If you have time, vote on the club law, bylaws and addendum. This is assuming that you're chartering today at the demonstration meeting. Woo, yeah. You may want to nominate and vote on your club officers. You'll need that information to finish filling out the forms. So at some point you need to know who are the club officers and get that information available. If you're not chartering at the demonstration meeting, keep meeting at whatever frequency is selected by the members. Keep inviting guests, encourage them to keep publicizing, help them with the publicizing, because that is an area that many members struggle with. So help them get the word out, radio, TV, newspaper, corporations in the area, if it's a community club, or getting the word out, let's say at the lunch table, if it's a corporate club, putting it in the elevator of corporate clubs, that sort of thing has worked in the past. All right, now I talked about the forms briefly. There's a lot. So whoever's in charge, and this is the sponsors, all right, predominantly the sponsors, they need to verify all of these forms. They will work with the club growth director to confirm that everything's working properly. They have the application to organize. You can submit that at any time. All right, that $125 payment and the fact that you are interested in chartering a club. Charter payments. This is for 20 or more members that are chartering, plus any of the new member fees that are associated with those new members. Membership application forms, which we talked about already. Make sure it's signed, make sure you got all that data filled out. Club officer information, who's the president, who's the vice president of education, and so forth. Club information, what's the name of the club, where are they meeting, and so forth. Club constitution needs to be approved, and if there's any changes or addendums to it, that also needs to be provided and signed for. All right, now some clubs will choose an addendum, for example, if it's a restricted club, or if there's something else special about the club, they will put that in the addendum. I know of one club that decided to have an extra officer. I know of at least one. I'm in one of them. And so if you have an extra officer that you decide that you want, that needs to go into the addendum as well. Okay, now with the 20 plus applications and payments, then you want to confirm, this is again is the sponsor's work. They will confirm the paperwork. If it's not done properly, it will get rejected. And so it's very important to get this done properly, and it won't delay your charter. So confirm everything, signatures, who the officers are, and then submit with the payment. When you're submitting with the payment, it could be simple as here's a credit card and ready, you typically will not submit the credit card information electronically or through some email. Instead, put down there, call me when you're ready to process the payment, and I will have the credit card available for you if it's going through that way. If it's not, if it's doing some other method, if it's working through, let's say, a sponsor club, we have debit cards as an example, and the treasurer of that sponsor club can be working directly with Toastmasters International World's headquarters to get that payment submitted properly. It's very important, and I haven't talked about this very much, but the treasurers, you need two treasurers. One is at the sponsor club and one is at the new club, and they need to keep track of all the payments. And they're matching their records, especially if it takes too long to charter. I say too long. If it takes a while to charter, they need to be matching this all the way throughout to make sure that there's congruence in the numbers. When a club charters, it typically takes a couple of months to get the EIN number from, and if this is a US club, it takes a couple months to get the EIN number from the US government to then set up a bank account. So just make sure that you are setting it up well with your club sponsor, that sponsor club, I said it backwards, but just make sure everything is working well with your sponsor club and the treasurer is doing an effective job so that you can have the funds needed to pay. If you have membership dues coming up, you need to make sure that you're still processing your payment. So it's a little extra work for that treasurer, and they need to be mentally prepared for that. Now, what happens if the club ends up folding before they've actually chartered? And ideally, this sponsor club will refund any eligible money to each of the members. Yes, we do want to commiserate. It's very sad because we had such high hopes for them. And then we want to encourage them, if possible, to join a different club and we can help them find the right club for them. Now, when we're submitting the paperwork, it goes to World's headquarters and to be processed. Again, work with the treasurer at the sponsor club to pay World's headquarters. And when the EIN number is available, set up the bank account for the club and make sure that in preparation for that, that you have minutes of the election. So who was the president and treasurer needs to be in that election minutes. And the bank will require that. And then what? You get to plan a party? Yay, party. All right, so we can have a good time. And you need to plan for this in the United States. You need to plan for about 4 to 6 weeks after you submitted your charter paperwork. Then you want to plan your charter party. Do invite people to it. Anybody that was involved with getting that club off the ground, your district leaders, any club sponsors that you had, sponsor clubs and sponsors and mentors, and anybody else who was actively engaged with getting that club off the ground. This is a celebration point, and it truly is a lot of fun. Okay, at this point, I want to ask if there's any questions. Let's go ahead and Tara, go ahead.
Who's responsible for submitting all of the paperwork that you've been mentioning? Is it the sponsor?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Now, when I was district governor at the time, there was one point where a bunch of us got together and had to go through that paperwork. And it was literally the last day before the end of the fiscal year to get that paperwork submitted. And so we were up till 10:30 at night trying to process it. I drove to Grand Rapids to do it. So it was nerve-wracking, but we got it submitted in time. And we had to make sure all that paperwork was accurate. Otherwise, it would have been rejected and that club would not have chartered by the end of the fiscal year.
So if there is a sponsor club and the sponsor club is responsible for doing aspects with submitting things with the money, if they don't have a bank account, the sponsor and the sponsor club has to coordinate
Yes.
with certain things. Okay.
Yeah, my suggestion on that is that you, when you're filling out the paperwork, that on the part, it's form number 2, which is the charter payment, that you actually put in there, call the treasurer of, and you can fill in the blank on the club name. And here's the phone number and email address for that treasurer. And that treasurer will pay the dues, whatever is required to get that club chartered. Thank you. Any other questions? You ready to charter a club? That's my question to you. Yeah. Woohoo! Charter a club. Yeah.
I'm good. I want some of my area directors.
Are they here today?
No, I wanted them to be. That's why.
All right. Well, we have recorded it for posterity purposes, and we will distribute widely amongst our leaders and anybody else interested in chartering a club. Hearing no further questions, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And let's go ahead and stop the recording. Come on. All right. It's not working. Let's stop that. Come on. Screen share. There it goes. Oh, we're having fun now. Stop share and stop the recording.